Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board to order for our Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, 12 p.m. meeting. And we'll have to vote in some participation electronically here in a moment. But let's do the attendance call first.
Okay, Supervisor Malik, Supervisor Galloway,
Present.
Councilor Pinkston,
Present.
Councilor Oshrin, Mr. Nelson.
I am online.
There you go. Quorum's present. I'm going to go through non-voting. Excuse me. Sorry. Mr. Murphy, Ms. Monteith here, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wagner, Mr. Minor, Mr. Koenig, Mr. Condor.
Here.
Myself is present. And that is everyone. Just a quick update, Mr. Wagner at DRPT has taken a different position and we have an interim at DRPT. It's Wood Hudson, but he wasn't able to make today's meeting. But we will have a new DRPT rep moving forward.
Great. And we may have a second member joining us electronically, but for now, Mr. Nelson is joining us virtually. Mr. Nelson, we have to vote you in. Could you just please state your location and why you're participating electronically?
I am currently in Busch Gardens right now, chaperoning an 8th grade field trip. Does not allow me to be there with you all today, which I would rather be. So that's why I'm virtual.
All right, is there a motion to allow Mr. Nelson to participate electronically? So moved.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, you are in. No comment.
Thank you.
You're like,
Well, you might have it here, you just can't see it.
you can't see it. So, all right, thank you. That will take us to matters from the public. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to give public comment? All right, please come up. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Policy Board. I'm Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council. I just have a couple of quick notes to share today. First of all, I and the host of organizations that have put together Bike Month in Charlottesville and Albemarle would like to really thank the county, the city, and also the TJPDC for really backboning a Bike Month this time. We've had just really a full month of activities, more than one activity per day. One of my favorite ones actually has been having a bike valet parking service at Fridays after 5. And the racks are filling up, so it's pretty cool to see how bikes could be quite easily inserted into the transportation mix. Another of my favorite events has been e-bike demos, which have been both in the city and county, and even at schools in both the city and the county. Again, like e-bikes, when I started working with PCs 7 years ago, you know, I was hearing about like hills. Charlottesville's not Amsterdam. We got big hills. It's hot as anything. People will be sweaty for work. Back then, I don't think anybody really thought about how e-bikes could transform the options that people have for transportation. And of course, part of my deal is never speak for any organizations that are not PC, but I believe Rideshare is still sponsoring a raffle for organizations that are logging their miles traveled with an e-bike as the grand prize. So that's pretty cool. Pivoting to the other half of what the Active Mobility Alliance promotes, walkability. A number of organizations are also, including the city and the county and TJPDC and others, are working with AARP to sponsor a walk audit, which is really a full day workshop about promoting walkability in urban spaces. And indeed, this interactive mini conference is happening if you throw a dart and you're good at it, you'd hit right in the middle of the MPO, which is at hydraulic 29. So it's going to take place at the Homewood Suites, which is behind the Whole Foods, I think. So that's June 7th, all day, Friday. It's free. I have flyers over by Gretchen for the walkability mini summit, and also bingo cards for bike month, also over by Gretchen. Thanks everybody, and thank you for your work.
Is there anyone else who wishes to give public comment?
I believe Mr. Condor online has his hand raised unless he put it back down.
Mr. Condor, are you wishing to give public comment?
I am. I just wanted to remind the policy board that back when we were considering the improvements to the US 29 hydraulic road interchange and the VDOT proposal to eliminate left turns from hydraulic road and install roundabouts on hydraulic road at Hillsdale and District Avenue was approved, that Supervisor Malik also said that the flyover option should be included in the long-range transportation plan. When I reviewed the draft, I didn't see it there, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention it because I think it should be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to give public comment? All right, we will close matters from the public. Thank you. And move to item 3. So we have to review and accept the agenda. Any changes to the agenda today? Is there a motion to approve? Move for approval of the agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. And then we need to approve the minutes of April 24, 2024. Any changes or edits to those minutes? All right, is there a motion to approve?
I move for approval of the April 24th, 2024 meeting minutes.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved. Thank you. And that will bring us to item 4, moving toward 2050, the long range transportation plan.
Great. I'll turn it over to Alan after a really quick bit of gratitude. As you guys know, pulling a plan together like this in 18 months is a large undertaking, especially when we've had a major staff transition. So I want to make sure just to publicly thank all of the focus groups that were involved, all of the MPO committees, CTAC, MPO Tech. We received a lot of support on this project and a lot of feedback at different points, all the way down to this final version and trying to refine it so it's the best plan that we can put out there. So I just want to say a thank you to everybody who really spent the time to dig through it, to find edits, to make suggestions so that we can polish it. I appreciate that. And then I'll turn it over to Alan.
Yeah, I will second that. Thank you all so much for taking a look and sending in your comments. I have a really brief presentation that I'm going to give, just going over the revisions that we made since the last time we met. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go over that. So should be coming up here. And do you all see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so quick presentation here. So our agenda, we're going to talk about the revisions, what the final draft looks like, the next steps, and any questions if there are any. So since the last time we met, we received and addressed over 80 suggested revisions to the plan from the technical committee, the citizens advisory committee, and the policy board. And I'll kind of run through what the nature of those revisions. I won't go through every single one, but we included a more thorough discussion of the goals, objectives, lenses, the performance metrics, and the needs evaluation metrics we developed for the plan. We made some minor revisions to the constrained and vision lists for improved readability and organization, and we added a few projects to the vision list at the request of Albemarle County staff. On page 58 of the version that you have in your packets, there was an error in the thresholds for the high, medium, and low need scores. So the method that we used was a 7-point scale, but the highest score that we had in the process was 5.07. So we simplified the scale into 3 categories. high, medium, and low, high being scores from 3 to 5.07, medium being scores from 2 to 2.9, and low being scores from 0 to 1.9. The version that you all have in your packet, I still had the information about the 7-point scale in there, so that sentence was inaccurate. I had forgotten that we had changed it at some point in the process, so my apologies there, but that language right there is what's in the plan now, and that's what that's the scale that we actually use throughout the process. We have finalized versions of all the appendices, so we included project review pages for each project, so that includes vicinity maps, detailed descriptions of each project, the breakdown of the needs prioritization score for each project. So that's a complement to the constrained and vision lists, or just the constrained list, excuse me. And we have a record of all public comments we received. We revised all the maps in the document. So there's new high resolution versions of every single map. I changed the base map to make it easier to read. Most of the symbology was changed just to make it a little easier to look at, and you can zoom in now and see things in detail. The previous version had some lower resolution maps, so those should be easier to see. In most cases, I also included a zoomed in map of Charlottesville, so you can see the location of you can look more closely in detail to conditions in the city. So those are complements to the MPO maps. High res versions of all the charts and graphs as well. Those were all redone for this version. Some updates to the acknowledgement section and some minor grammar and style edits throughout the document. So all told, about 80 revisions to the maps and the content of the document. And the final draft, which you have in your packets, it incorporates all those previously mentioned revisions. The layout's been fully overhauled. So the previous version was just a Word document, and now it's a more polished, hopefully visually appealing document. It should be easier to read and navigate. And next steps. So the MPO may decide to revise the plan at any time. While it must be adopted this month, there are future opportunities to tweak the document if necessary. And just thanks again for all your valuable feedback, your guidance and support throughout this process. You all helped to make this a much better plan than the version that I sent you last month, so we really appreciate it. So if there are any questions, happy to answer those.
Mr. Galloway, I can add that in the MPO Tech Committee, the MPO Tech did recommend that you all adopt the plan as presented.
Yep. I would imagine well, I don't imagine, I know that if hydraulic comes back and there starts to be traction on doing a major piece, if there's an element that's not included in here, we can revise the plan to include it. Mr. Connolly.
Yes, revisions can be made.
Yeah, great. All right, if there are no questions, then is there a motion to adopt the moving toward 2050, the long range transportation plan?
With the one revision as noted in the change of the scaled score.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would move the resolution that's in the packet adopting the MPO's 2050 long range transportation plan, moving forward 2050 with the asterisks, I guess, of
The one revision that Mr. Simpson shared.
Okay.
With the scaled score. It's just an edit that wasn't in the final draft.
All right, motion's been there. Seconded, and we'll do a roll call on this one.
Supervisor Mallett. Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Councilor Pinkston,
yes.
Councilor Oshler,
Yeah.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. And appreciate everyone's efforts. I know this always takes a lot of time to get this one done, so appreciate that.
Can I
Thank
add
you
one
all.
more thing?
Yes.
Can I do a thank you to the EPR team? They had a contracted role from the beginning to support with technical assistance and to support some of the community engagement. And with Stan's staff transition, they took on a much more substantive role and have made themselves very accessible. They've been a pleasure to work with. They've been very, flexible and gracious in catching the team up that wasn't involved from the beginning. And so just a thank you to you all for helping get us to the finish line in such a short period of time. Thank you, Alan. Thank you all.
Yeah, happy to help. Thank you.
Great. All right, that will take us to number 5, VDOT update on projects. And the first is the I-64 5th Street interchange improvement at exit 120. And then the Barracks Road pipeline, 29 US 250 interchange and shared use path. Who was doing that?
That's Sandy.
Sandy.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I feel like we missed an opportunity to like throw some confetti or have a celebration.
Like it feels a little anticlimactic
Yeah.
after 18 months. Woo.
So good to be with you all today. Chuck is not able to be here today. I just want to, first of all, thank him in the meeting while the gratitude is flowing freely for helping to put together this presentation today. But the first thing I want to do is just remind you all of what the projects are that we have been working on supporting for smart scale applications. There's going to be a resolution in the packet that you all will have the opportunity to vote on. So we want to make sure we answer as many questions as we can up front about the projects, and then also provide some additional information because we were doing some additional work with the Street 964 interchange project. So we are in good shape as far as meeting all the milestones, or the gates are what they're calling it for smart scale, to make sure that the projects are on track to be ready for the final applications, which will need to be submitted on August 1st. The three kind of four projects that the MPO is working on developing is the 5th Street 964 interchange improvements, the Pam Taps corridor slate of projects that was developed as part of the round 5 application development process, and then 2 projects for the Barracks Road pipeline. We're not going to spend a lot of time today going over the US 250 Pam Taps corridor pipeline. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those, but I want to make sure we have time to answer any questions related to the 5th Street I-64 interchange improvements and Barracks Road. So to start with the 5th Street interchange, this slide just shows the existing conditions. This is what is there right now, a traditional pipeline. The purpose of the project that we are, so the needs that we're trying to address as far as what improvements we want to see at this location is that there are high crash volumes both on 5th Street and on the eastbound ramp coming off of 64 heading on to 5th Street. There are multiple V-Trans needs related to safety, both for general safety as well as pedestrian safety, bicycle and pedestrian and transit connections, congestion mitigation. And our goals are to address both of the interchange operations and safety, as well as enhance multimodal accessibility. We have undergone a more recent public engagement process to get feedback on what the preferred alternative would be at this location. But this improvement really was identified initially as part of a 5th Street corridor study that was completed a couple years ago with substantive stakeholder engagement, where the DDI was identified tentatively as the preferred solution for this area. So this is an addendum to that initial work that had been done to confirm that this would be the preferred solution in terms of developing the application. So this first slide right here shows the location of crashes and the types of crashes that are being experienced at the interchange currently. There are a number of rear end crashes that are occurring on this eastbound ramp, as well as between the on and off ramps along 5th Street. Yeah, what's the time frame for this data collection? It's a 5-year window. They use that 5-year crash history. I do not know if this is 2016 to 2020 or if it's a later year, but it would be a 5-year period. Thank you. Yeah, there was one pedestrian involved crash on 5th Street during the time period that the data was collected. There were four alternatives that were developed and put out for public feedback in terms of the public survey. So the first, so this graphic here just shows an analytical comparison of the different options based on what the anticipated outcomes would be if each of these alternatives was implemented. So this first column right here is existing conditions. There's an optimized diamond, the DDI, this buoy that is a single point urban interchange, And then, the sidewalk only concept is basically the existing conditions and adding a sidewalk. And we can go through what each of those alternatives are. But the first thing that, we looked at was ran each of these alternatives through an analytical tool to determine what the operational outcomes would be under each of these, alternatives. So this first row shows the volume to capacity improvements or outcomes that would be anticipated. The existing conditions shows the volume is currently exceeding capacity. And then you can see that the volume to capacity is reduced through these different treatments. The single point urban interchange has the highest improvement, so it has the highest reduction of volume to capacity. The optimized diamond has the most minimal impact, and the DDI is invisible. And then we looked at the crash modification factor, and so this is a factor that tells us how much we could anticipate the crashes could be reduced under each of these alternatives. So the way you would use this crash modification factor is you would multiply this basically against the number of crashes that you're seeing now, and that would be the anticipated number of crashes that you would see if any of these alternative improvements were put into place. So the lower this number, the higher the reduction in crashes you would be compared to the existing conditions. The one thing that I want to make sure is clear is that this 0.12 right here for the sidewalk only concept would only show that crash modification factor. This only applies to the pedestrian related crashes. So there's one pedestrian related crashes. This does not apply to crashes that don't involve pedestrians. And then this relative cost shows how much each of the interventions or alternatives would cost relative to each other, to give kind of the idea of the ballpark cost for each.
Can you explain a little bit more about how the sidewalk doesn't, the math doesn't factor in how that would affect our car crashes?
Yeah, so this is only a crash modification factor. The only crashes that this would demonstrate an impact to would be pedestrian related crashes. So the sidewalk, so the sidewalk would reduce pedestrian related crashes by basically 88%.
Right, but there's no map on what the sidewalk would do to diminish car crashes. That was done, or it's not known how that would be done, or how come that's not something that we're able to see about?
Because there wouldn't be an impact based on the analysis table that's there. The sidewalk that is being proposed wouldn't have an impact on.
Even though theoretically it would be making the lane smaller, and studies show that that does reduce crashes? Or would it not be making the lane smaller?
I think I can't specifically tell you how it applies to this specific context, but this is basically just looking at a table of how much each of these alternatives would have an impact on the crash rates. And so other things like the lane narrowing might have a modest impact, but that's not going to, I mean, what this is analyzing is just the impact of putting in a sidewalk, not any other improvements that would be occurring to the configuration. Okay.
So can I clarify, that means just adding a sidewalk, not what adding a sidewalk would do to the width of the lane? So just by having a sidewalk.
Okay, so that's not like a fully built up model. If we did all of this, then it could potentially have that much, because
Right.
it's kind of like a basic.
Yeah, it's looking at it in isolation.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. So there were 4 different alternatives that were included in a survey for the public feedback. The first one is the DDI. We can talk about this in more detail because this was identified as the preferred solution, and that, spoiler alert, was confirmed by the public feedback. So we can talk about this a little bit more at the end. But basically, there would be a shared use path that starts in this is north on this end. So this would be the northeast quadrant that would connect to the Fifth Street Hudson Trail project that's currently under development. So there'd be a connection to the existing multimodal facilities. The shared use path runs along the east side of the street. It would cross at this leg of the interchange ramps. This would be a stop controlled location for the crossing. So there's a signal that would support the pedestrian movements through the ramp. The shared use path would go down the middle of the diverging diamond. It would be a 10-foot shared use path with either a 1 or 2 foot barrier on those sides, and there would be a concrete barrier that is put into place to provide a physical barrier between multimodal movements and the vehicular traffic. And then the crossing would be on the southwest side, also at a signalized crossing. And then the connection, the shared use path would continue to this first driveway area where there's an existing sidewalk. So that was the first alternative that the public was asked to weigh in. The second alternative is an optimized diamond, which would look a lot like what's there right now. The addition would be that there would be a right turn slip from 5th Street onto 64 in both directions that's added. And then there would also be a eastbound left turn lane, an additional eastbound left turn lane that's added. And there would be sidewalks on both sides of the bridge. The single point urban interchange would basically have a centralized traffic control signal in at the midpoint of the intersection that would control the directional movement of all of these. And then it would provide a shared use path on the west side of the street. The challenge with the single point urban interchange is that you would need a much wider bridge. And so if you go back to that first chart, it shows this is being very expensive because you would have to rebuild the bridge in order to accommodate. And then the last alternative that was considered is basically the existing diamond as is there now, and the improvement would be to have a sidewalk on the opposite side of the bridge. So we put this out for public comment. We got the comments back on Friday. So we did try to do some analysis on the survey responses, but it is pretty limited at this point. And you can see out of all of the alternatives, we had 967 survey respondents overall. And on average, the highest score was for the diverging diamond out of all of the alternatives. Sorry.
Just curious, is that like a lot of respondents for the studies that we have, or is that average or low? Or?
I don't know how to, I mean, I would say like this seems pretty high, but I think we've seen an uptick in the number of responses recently, but more recently, there's been more responses, higher response rates on some of these surveys, but I think we can feel like this has been a well-publicized effort to get people to take the survey. Right? Yeah. So there were, go back to the slide, there were 967 total survey participants. Of those 967 survey participants, 868 of them provided a score for the diverging diamond interchange. And then of those 868, 286 respondents provided comments. So what we wanted to do was to understand what kind of comments people had on the DDI in order to understand what the concerns were. But I also want to make sure that I'm framing this appropriately to say that a very small number of folks who scored the DDI made comments. So the comments are not necessarily reflective of general opinion. So one of the things we did was coded the comments just for the DDI, positive, neutral, or negative, and then assess what percentage of each of these types of comments came based on the numerical score that they gave the DDI as a concept. So we broke this up into quadrants. So they gave it a score of 0 to 25, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, 76 to 100. And as you would probably expect, the people who rated the DDI lower had a higher percentage of negative feedback that they gave. So the feedback that we received through the comments largely was by people who, for the most part, rated the DDI fairly low. But there was a fairly, but that was closely followed by people who rated the DDI pretty high. So that's just to help understand the context in which to take the general things that were heard in the comments. So the last thing that we did is basically took all of the comments that were given for each of the concepts, or anybody who provided a comment on any of those concepts, put those through basically an AI processor to say, like, what is the general concern, or what is the general sentiment for each of these concepts. And what we found is that the diverging diamond was more mixed, whereas the other ones were more negative about the concepts. So the concerns are largely still about the safety and comfort level for pedestrians and cyclists. I think this makes sense because a lot of the feedback was based on people's experience with the other DDIs in the area, and there aren't other DDIs in the area that have pedestrian and bicycle accommodations through them. So this would be a different type of facility that people don't have experience with. So it's understandable that there would be some questions. But there was still a lot of feedback that said that, you know, out of all the designs, this seems to be the one that would be the safest, even if there were still some questions about how it would be. So I think with all of that said, it seems like there's still the public support as well as the initial assessment looking at the crash modification factors, operational improvements, and the cost overall would still support the DDI as the preferred alternative for this search. So any questions on this?
Questions?
Before you move on to the next one, can I interrupt? That notification that he's saying is coming from here, and I would like to get rid of that really quickly. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, thanks. That was fun.
Just as a reminder for pan tops, it includes the at-grade crossings at Broken Road and 250 of pan tops. So there would be these bicycle or pedestrian crossings really on 3 legs of this intersection. It would include a modification of the signal there, and it would include a sidewalk between Broken Road and I'm thinking of the name of the street. Well, it's about 500 feet from the intersection right here. And then a state farm. And then the next part of this is just a little bit further east. There would be the median crossing at the hotel. And then there would be some an extension of the installation of a left turn lane. Going from Peter Jefferson Parkway, or going from 250 onto this is Glenarchy Drive. And then there would be a through cut onto Peter Jefferson Parkway, which basically would allow traffic coming from Peter Jefferson Parkway to turn right or left, but not go through the intersection straight. And then there would also be this 50 vehicle park and ride lot with a bus loop that would buses would be able to come to here, drop off or pick up passengers, and then continue through. And then the Barrett corridor improvements, as you'll recall, there are 2 applications that are being submitted by the MPO. So this will include converting Georgetown Road, or this intersection, into a roundabout with pedestrian crossings at all 4 legs. There would be some access management improvements, so crossing the crossovers, the medium crossovers, throughout along the corridor on Barracks Road between Georgetown Road and the interchanges. There would be concrete pads for 2 transit facilities or transit stops, one at Surrey Road and one up here on Georgetown Road. The concrete pad at Georgetown Road would be able to accommodate a transit shelter that would be installed separately as part of this application, but it would be designed to accommodate that. And then there would be a shared use path that is being planned along the west side of Barracks Road through the entire length of the corridor. At the interchanges, there would be these two roundabouts that are being installed. This we're in different phases of updating them, but there would be two crosswalks or crossings that would also be added on Barracks Road on either side of these interchange roundabouts. So one of them would be approximately right there, the other one would be approximately about right there, and then there would be pedestrian crossings on all four of the entrance and exit ramps with the appropriate pedestrian safety devices, either rapid flashing beacons or hawk signals, whatever is merited to improve safety with the shared use path, continuing through the interchanges.
Sandy, what is the teal bluish?
This right here,
Yeah, there.
those are stormwater management facilities. And then the shared use path would continue on the west side of Barracks Road down to the project terminus at Emmett Street.
Can you remind us how wide that shared use path is?
It's either, I think it's gonna be either 8 feet or 10 feet. I'm not sure where that, but one of those. And just as a reminder, the first application for the MPO would be for the full corridor, and the second application for the MPO would be basically from the interchange south into the city. Any questions?
Questions? Okay.
I think that's it for the Barracks Road project.
I'm sorry, that component is still coming from the MPO, the third piece there.
The part right here,
Yeah,
this would be part of the MPO's
so
application.
the 1, 2, 3 slides are all part of it.
They're all part of that full corridor. The second application would basically just be 2 and 3. So it's 2 and 3.
With Albemarle submitting slide 1. So the MPO is looking at the full project and the interchange through 29, with Albemarle submitting the Georgetown to the interchange along with that project,
All right, thank you.
of course.
All right, any further questions? So we need to take votes to endorse.
Yep, I would first like to share with you the MPO technical committee's feedback. And I'm going to read to you their motion because I want to make sure that I get it correct, and there's numbers here, so correct me if I get something wrong. There was a motion made in MPO Tech to recommend adoption of the resolution with the added comment that the Barracks Road project should have serious consideration for crossings at Cedars and Surrey in a future design due to the long distance between the crossings in the current design and the presence of a bus stop at Surrey with a trail at Cedars. That was for this one. So they wanted to make sure that was noted. With that said, they didn't put it as a condition of their recommendation. They just wanted to make sure it was a comment that was shared, that they recommend it with that comment stated.
Could we see that on the map? Is that possible? Can you pop that back up? I can pull it up.
Cedars is basically, maybe it's down near where the trail crossing, where the, Urbana Trail, I got it. And Surrey would be right here.
I would be happy to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
If you're ready for that.
Yes.
I would move the adoption of the resolution endorsing the CA MPO smart scale applications for round 6, as those were presented, along with the other information, just just mentioned in terms of recommendations from the MPO Tech committee.
All right, is there a second? That would be a roll call.
That's me. Supervisor Mallett. Supervisor Galloway,
Yes?
Counselor Pinkston,
Yes.
Counselor Oshman,
Yeah.
Mr. Nelson.
I'm abstaining.
Yeah, and was that both resolutions that could be accommodated in that? Or-
No, the next one is if you would like to see a presentation on Albemarle counties, she has those available, but a requirement for the localities smart scale applications is that the MPO have a resolution of support for any projects within the urbanized area. So if you'd like further information on those projects, Sandy has it. Otherwise, I have feedback from MPO Tech and a recommended motion for you all.
Basically. of course.
Yeah.
Any further questions about the outcome? Right, is there a motion to? Yeah, endorse.
Can I put an MPO Tech's comment as well, just in case you want to make it as a part of yours? Sorry to interrupt you. MPO Tech made a motion to recommend adopting the resolution endorsing the CIM, endorsing Albemarle County's applications, and for the Barracks Road project specifically, again, they wanted consideration made for pedestrian crossing at Surrey in the future design due to long distance between crossings in the current design and the presence of a bus stop at Surrey.
I would move a resolution endorsing the submission of smart scale HB2 applications, requesting transportation funding by localities, in this case specifically Albemarle County, along with the notes that were just made in terms of recommendations from the MPO Tech committee.
All right, do a roll call.
Supervisor Mallett. Supervisor Galloway,
Yes?
Counselor Pinkston,
Yes.
Counselor Oshman, Mr. Nelson.
Abstain.
Take us to number 7, highway systems functional classification update.
Okay, so I put a memo about this in your packet. This is an informational item only. It doesn't require any action from you all. Every 10 years, an update to the federal functional classification is done following the 2010 census. There were approved changes in 2014. Now with the release of the 2020 census, VDOT is reviewing the functional classifications. For those of you that are not aware, although most of you in the room are, the functional classification is the process by which the streets and the highways are grouped into classes or systems according to the character of service that they're intended to provide. VDOT's Transportation and Mobility Planning Division, TMPD, is who maintains the federal functional classification system, and the TMPD determines the functional classification of the road by types of trips, the expected volume, what systems the roadway connects, and whether the proposed functional classification falls within the mileage percentage thresholds established by the FHWA. And so this is a process that is beginning now. It needs to be finalized by FHWA in 2024, September of 2024. Backwards mapping that, making sure that we have enough time for the locality staff who has received everything that was in your packet to go do a deep dive into the data, the GIS map, and make sure that the recommended changes to the classification are being reviewed at the local level first. It'll then come back to MPO Tech and the MPO Policy Board for their recommendation, and then subsequent approval in the August, I believe, August meeting. I'm hesitating on that only because I will let you guys know in the Virginia Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, the VAMPO, there has been some discussion amongst MPOs at the speed at which this review is being required to be conducted. And so there has been some discussion about potentially reaching out to VDOT to say, can we get an extension so that we have ample time to be looking at every single roadway and reviewing the requirements for how it's classified. And so what I have in your memo is the timeline as it exists. If for some reason there is an extension, I would just bring back to you all to let you know what the new timeline would be. As of right now, I would need any feedback from locality staff. Or really anyone, if you want to take a deep dive into this, I would need any feedback by mid-June in order to be able to get it on a July agenda for you all. So with that said, if there are any extensions, I'll let you know.
Questions? I don't think we need to get into it today. It sounds like this will be coming in the recommendations, but I always have to reread on VDOT site what connectors are, what materials are, etc. Then when I look at the map, it baffles me sometimes which ones are what they say they are. What is, and I don't need the answer today, but maybe when it comes back to this, what's the pragmatic impact for us if a road classification isn't what we think it should be?
Yeah, the most significant one that I am aware of is related to eligibility for federal funding, depending on what the classification of the road is. So some programs will only fund specific classifications of road improvements. That is the one that I'm the most aware of. There may be others that I'm not aware of.
And I didn't read that. Do we have that information?
You did not. That's within the 80, well, it was attached to the agenda as a link, but it's like an 89-page technical document.
Oh, I read the one quick over.
No, this is, and this is also,
Nice little colored squares.
this is also information that I'm sharing based on the discussion at the VAMPO meeting, the VAMPO, is that was one of the major concerns, is without ample time to really look at every single roadway, there would be risks long-term of saying for the next 10 years, we could have, an error in there that we cannot fix until the next census.
Well, I can't speak for the city, but for the most part, looking at Albemarle, I don't think there would be a lot of disagreement with most of the classifications, but there are some where it's a little like, I don't know about that. But not knowing what the consequence is, it's like, well, is the conversation worth the effort if the consequence isn't really that? Like if it's between two classifications and neither one qualify for federal funding anyway, then there's no real.
I think the more important thing for locality staff that they're aware of is making sure there's not errors that are like mistakes rather than should we do one or the other, but rather it is this, but it's classified. The recommended change is the wrong classification. So for example, in the recommended changes, we're already made aware of one error that's in there, that was in the memo as well. And that is the 250 corridor from Shadwell to Zion Crossroads should be classified as a minor arterial, but it is incorrect in the proposed changes. So it's really looking through and making sure that all of those proposed changes are accurate before it comes to you all for action.
I mean, the two that I would call out, and maybe that and check it out. The Park Street 250 to the interchange, it's different than from 60-118 to Park Street. It's a different classification. Which I didn't understand that because it's 250 between the two interchanges. And then East Riley Road. From basically 250 up to where it meets at front of K-Tech. Those are two that I'm looking at and just hoping for further understanding why they're classified what they are in comparison to some other roads based on my understanding of the descriptions.
Okay.
I'll just call those, throw those out.
Jessica, did you get those? And I know she'll have them. And then you said for the next meeting, it would be helpful for you all to get a presentation of the different classifications and.
Like, for example, there's minor and major connectors, connectors. If minor and major connectors, if neither one of those qualifies for something, then it doesn't really matter if it's a minor or a major. It's not worth the effort of going, oh, it should be a major when the outcome's the same. Maybe it means down the road, it jumps from major to minor arterial or something. So maybe it still has to take that step. But I don't know enough about those classifications to know what the pragmatic impact is from a funding standpoint or project scoring or things like that. And for 250, that's even a different, like, why all of a sudden does it change classification? Just because it goes under Park Street? I don't understand.
If I could ask Mr. Chambers, is that? Would you sort of already be planning to evaluate this document as it comes up?
They have put it before us and we already.
Okay.
Sure, everything checks out the city. There are a couple spots that I've already found that don't make a whole lot of sense the way that they're currently classified.
So it sounds like staff is already done.
If that's what you want more time for. Yeah, right. Yeah, of course.
And there, you know, it was linked in here, but there's a guide for how to classify these. It's not just like this feels like it should be this versus that. That's that, I think it was 80-some page guide for how you identify what the classification should be.
That's
There's a rubric, not just vibes.
What?
There's a rubric, it's not just vibes.
That sounds like it's an exciting
Some
work.
great late night reading.
Got it.
Was that an old expression, the network is the computer?
Well, you know, the summary page is actually quite good. It explains all the things, it gets into what the rationales are for each one. And I mean, without having to do the deep dive, you can pretty much get it without it just being, oh, this feels like it should be this. And stuff. But I'm really thinking more about the next step. Like, well, what's the consequence if it's mislabeled? Or, just wanting to understand that. All right, do that took care of all this. There's no action there, just the drafts for reviews. So that brings us to staff updates.
Okay, I have two for you. One of them is I'd like to introduce new staff member ours behind you all in the blue suit. That is Sarah Simba. Sarah Simba is coming to us as a regional transportation planner. She will be working, supporting all the transportation planning as well as the MPO. She'll primarily be working through MPO Tech and CTAC, but will be at many of the policy board meetings, so you will get to interact with her. So welcome to Sarah. The second update that I have for you, as many of you were following bills in the General Assembly, there was a bill that was passed that allowed for remote participation in meetings to increase from, instead of up to 25% of the meetings, up to 50% of the meetings. Also within that legislation, there was a requirement that the remote or electronic participation policy of any public body be reviewed and reapproved annually. And so coming to you all in the first meeting after the change of the fiscal year will be a revised policy allowing for the greater number of electronic meetings that we'll be asking you to consider for adoption, and then that will then come back annually. Those are my two updates.
Great. And does the commission board just make that call and then everything under the umbrella follows suit?
For MPO Policy Board, you guys would have your own.
So it's a separate.
Yeah, any of our advisory, you guys as a decision-making body, we would want you to pass your own policy. Any of the advisory boards up to the commission, we can do through the commission's policy.
I didn't know here about meeting schedule, was that?
Yes, thank you. Oh yeah, that's next. Meeting schedule, typically the policy board and MPO Tech and CTAC, when it is not a long-range transportation year, they meet every other month. So you all, up until this past year, meet every other month. And so I just wanted to propose or ask of you all, are you interested in going back to the every other month meetings now that the long-range transportation plan has been adopted? With that said, if you do, I would recommend just staff recommendation to leave the June meeting on our calendars. Should there be any substantive changes that require coming back to you all for smart scale, since the applications are due July 15th. But if there are no substantive changes, then we could take that meeting off of the calendar and then I could switch to every other month moving forward after that.
I think June works because they have to let you miss July and a lot of the boards actually take a lighter July.
Well, your meeting schedule, actually, your policy board normally meets July, September, November, January, March. So you're actually on and off every other month. That's what you guys always have been.
We have to change that in fiscal year or calendar year?
I think you can
Meeting
change
schedule.
that fiscal year. I would have to review the bylaws to make sure it's not written anywhere in the bylaws,
Yeah.
like when your meetings are. So I can look at that.
So at this point, you are planning to meet in June.
At this point, I'm gonna leave the June meeting on your calendar. If there's not significant items on the agenda, then we'll cancel it.
So it's in placeholder mode.
Say that again?
It's in placeholder mode.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Great.
In the meantime, I'll look at the bylaws so that before the next meeting, I can have an answer for you on which every other month.
Awesome. So that brings us to our roundtable updates. And we will go online first. So I'll just go around the table. Mr. Condor, any updates today? Feedback?
No, actually, we didn't meet since the last time, your meeting, was, we all submitted our comments independently to the long-range transportation plan, but our next meeting is in July.
Great, thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson, any items you want to report on?
Only thing is, we gone through the gate 2 of the smart scale pre-application, so that is moving forward. The next step will be the gate 3. So looking forward to progressing with these applications and hoping we have some successful projects in round 6. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to make the request that next time you're at Busch Gardens, you sit by the water ride with the camera on so that you can see if the water hits you.
It was closed today, so that was in the plans, but that ride was closed.
Man, ruined our fun. Great. Then Sandy, any additional items?
No.
Mr. Esty?
That's sir.
I don't know you.
I'm new.
Well, I'm Ed.
I'm sorry, open. I'm in C3, I'm new, kind of just as project manager.
Was pleasure to meet you. Well, Peter already gave remarks. Anything brand spanking new too that you want to give any comments or updates on? Just moving around.
There's nothing to say here, but I'm very, very excited to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you. I can say thank you.
Albemarle?
Yeah, and note that Albemarle County staff will be bringing the smart scale applications and the resolution to the Albemarle County Board on June 12th. So you get more presentations from us with the newest and most updated sketches and hopefully some cost estimates on June 12th. That's really my only update.
Awesome. Charlottesville?
We closed our public comment for our draft sidewalk priorities at the beginning of this month. So now we're sorting through all those, figuring out how they inform the final priorities, which will come out in June. We're also working with our bike head advisory committee to come up with some quick build ideas. They've come up with about a dozen. So now we as city staff are reviewing them, trying to determine the feasibility of putting them on the ground. So we sort of developed an open source way of getting ideas from the community into the city government and onto the street. We are wrapping up the CAT transit strategic plan right now. We had our second of 2 public meetings earlier this afternoon. We will be coming before city council, I think the 3rd, to present on that and ask for adoption. We have to send that to DRPT for adoption by the end of June. So that's where we're headed. I'll reemphasize bike month activities are ongoing and plentiful. Please go to bikemonthcville.org and find the calendar of activities and join us. There's plenty more to do this month. I think there's another activity that Peter mentioned earlier. Oh, the walk audit. We'll be doing this actually 3 different public events out sort of by that hydraulic intersection in the first week of June. The first is VDOT's citizen information meeting for the District Avenue roundabout. That'll be on the 4th. We also have the walk audit that week. And then the following Sunday, we have the community walk series that we're doing, monthly walk series throughout neighborhoods in the city. That one happens to be the Meadows, so we'll be in the neighborhood looking at some of the projects about
The public comment then? Respond to you.
I don't.
Well, we are done with the roundtable updates. Any additional matters from the public online? Or in the room? So we will move past that. And we are there. 5:01. So just keep the placeholder on June and Christine will let us know as soon as possible.
I just looked them up. It's up to you all to establish a regular date and place for your meetings is all it says. So it would be up to you all which every other month.
Sweet. All right, well, if there are no objections, then we will adjourn until potentially the June meeting. Great, thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
everyone.